Travel. It's when you make an appointment with the unfamiliar, looking to learn new things, needing lots of video footage that only a few people really want to watch. Basically, it's a colonoscopy with jet lag. Thanks to the pandemic, a trip to the DMV may have been the most exotic experience of your month. And if we're still coming up for solutions like this, we're clearly not ready to go all the way out back into the world. So what's the big deal if we don't go anywhere new? In the last year, I have made my existing environment infinitely cooler. I mean, I'm totally not obsessed about the organization of my sheet music. But seriously though, you can't have cantatas and requiems on the same shelf. And no matter what you say, there's nothing neurotic about laminating your charts from that Duran Duran cover band you were in during that exploring your options phase. It's healthy to look around and learn about other places. You know, the ones outside of your shelter-in-place home. As members of westernized cultures, music rooted in tonality, or to put it in Rodgers and Hammerstein terms, the Maria just cut up the curtains to make play close music. The sights and smells of major and minor are familiar to us. You can't walk 10 feet without hitting a tonic or a dominant. Like many things, it might not even dawn on us that the basic ingredients of music, or how we engage with it as listeners, could be anything but what is familiar to us already. But don't forget, there's a whole world out there beyond Great British Baking Show and Postmates. In regions that don't identify as Western, approaches to pitch, rhythm, song length, and notation vary widely. Exposure to new things reminds us there are infinite ways to experience music. As Mark Twain said so wisely,
travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. It's also a great way to rack up Amex points so you can finally buy that lifetime supply of exotic caramels.
Yes, exposure and awareness are crucial to our growth as human beings. So water your plants, stop your mail, and buy a seat for the cello, because we're taking a trip. We're flying past the borders of Western tonality, heading straight for the sounds of the Arab world.
A lot of similarities in that sense of just the basic components of music, the notes, its melody, rhythm, and things like that. But it's what the cultures have done with those components is where they start to diverge.
In this first of 2 episodes, Jim introduces us to basic elements of Middle Eastern music.
To hear like a truly melodic music really floored me. I think it really like just went right into me, you know. So I had to like pursue it. Yeah, I must say that really blew my mind when I first started studying this music, that there were like, 24 notes per octave? And then I felt jilted, like, what? I haven't been able to use all the notes? What's going on?
Stick around so you can listen differently. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I knew that I was interested in music at a young age. I took the piano really quickly. And my mom had a classical guitar, a nylon string guitar, and I would try to, make sounds on that, but it was really just frustrating for me at the time. I was a little kid. Then started realizing that music was an outlet for me. It was like a psychological release for me, a spiritual release, even at a really young age, even if I didn't have those same words for it. I could just play all day. I don't need music. I don't need to play other people's music. There's enough in me. And so that became something I was working with more and more over the years. By the time I got to UCSB, I was just, completely like a disciple of music. And I was basically ready to play anything I could get my hands on. But at that time, and this is what the 90s, the only thing I could get my hands on were guitars and maybe like banjos and things like that, or, different types of keyboards. And every once in a while, some type of world music instrument would fall into my hands, like a kalimba, like a thumb piano, or a type of hand drum. And, I would just get in a zone and just play anything I could. I'd play on tables, I'd always be playing something. I remember like hearing this music, my ears perked immediately, and I started walking. I was like cutting through the crowds, and I finally found them, and I was there right in front of them. And the melodies just hit me, and the rhythms just hit me. And then there's the instruments, the gorgeous instruments that I'm looking at, and their smiling faces. And I just couldn't really, I didn't understand what I was feeling. I just knew that I just made a bookmark. When I get to UCSB, first thing I'm gonna do is join that ensemble. And I went up to him, I said, "Hi, I'd like to join the Middle East Ensemble." And he said, "Okay, well, let's meet at 3:30 today. And we'll talk about it." And I meet him, and he basically hands me an oud and like gives me like a quick 15-minute lesson and writes down some notes and things like this. And I have an oud and I'm ready to go. And I on Tuesday night, which was the following day, that was Monday, I was in rehearsal.
That's how LA Phil recruits their players too.
I started taking music major, requirements, the theory and history, and I was doing jazz piano and jazz theory and such. And what I realized was that jazz made my soul hurt, because it forced me to think so much while in order to play, even to improvise, you have to think about all the chord changes. And I just like, it made my back hurt. It made me hot. And I found myself going, okay, I just got to play. And I do what I did when I was a kid and just start improvising and playing. And it dawned on me, what I was improvising was modal music. I never did chord progressions on the guitar or on the piano when I improvised. I would drop into a one mode in a drone type situation, and I would play countless melodies over that drone. And I didn't realize it was modal music until I started to understand Middle Eastern music. And so when I heard the UCSB Middle East Ensemble for the first time, I think that's what really hit me, was I was hearing pure just melody and not harmony. And it was the melodies that were really speaking to me. My BA was composition and ethnomusicology. But then when I went into grad school, I just focused direct, of course, I was very focused at that point. And I went into ethnomusicology graduate studies, MA PhD program. When the field started, it was about traditional music, folk musics that were precious and not studied. That term, thankfully, expanded over the years to include anything: video game music, elevator music, anything, any context you can think of that has music associated with it is valid, because that is a cultural study of music. There's countries in the Middle East that do not speak the same language. Armenia and Tunisia, for example, one speaks Arabic, one speaks Armenian, and Turkey, they speak Turkish, and they will not understand each other. But if you're talking about the Arab world, then you're specifically referring to the Arabic speaking countries in the Middle East. That essentially is the Middle East, spanning from all the way to the west, Morocco, across North Africa, Algeria, Tunisia, to Egypt. And then as you go up along the Mediterranean there, you have Lebanon and Syria. And then, of course, on the right, if you keep going east, you have the Gulf countries in Iraq and Iran and Turkey above them all, and Armenia up there as well in the northeast. So it's a very diverse landscape, and it's a very diverse culture. People have different accents, people have different cultural customs. We both use 7-note scales. It's the whole mode. It will fit inside of an octave. And that's pretty similar. I guess.
And that's where we depart.
Yeah.
We have octaves.
A lot of similarities in that sense of just the basic components of music, the notes, melody, rhythm, and things like that. But it's what the cultures have done with those components is where they start to diverge. But it's actually the opposite, Lynn. It's the pianos that are out of tune. But the harmonic series is a series of waves that are built into one pitch.
Wait, what?
If you just play, if you just hit a key on the organ, and it's C, let's say, and that notice is going, all these frequencies in that pitch, and you would see these waveforms and their corresponding frequencies. What they did was they tried to fudge some of the notes so that they would be consonant in different keys. They essentially detuned the notes so that they would all be balanced so that you could play in 12 keys and all the notes would sound good in all 12 keys. That's kind of in a nutshell that there are natural occurring notes in nature, and they're actually half flats and quarter and eighth flats or sharps or whatnot. They're notes that do not fit in our system because the West wanted to run with harmony. And thank God they did, because they did quite a job with harmony. I mean, they've taken it to all kinds of levels. It was just out of necessity. They needed a system where they could use all the notes and modulate to all these different keys. It's so easy for people in this music to say, oh my gosh, Western rhythm is so paltry. Like they have 4/4, 6/8, 3/4. We have 22s, 13, 7s, 9s, 10. All these, but it's not to be compared that way. The West ran with something else, and these musics ran with something else. And I like to think of harmony and harmonic textures as vertical complexity. There's a lot going on, a lot of notes stacked on top of each other. Or you can even have a single melody with chords supporting it. But in the Middle East, a lot of people say, oh, it's monophonic. It's a monophonic music. And that's true because everybody's playing the same melody. But here's really the magic. Every instrument is limited and gifted with its own unique flavors and textures. As an oud player, I would play the melody a very specific way based on what my instrument can do for me or what I can do with it. And likewise, a nai player, obviously a flute player, doing trills and things are super easy. It's just like, you just move your fingers around like really quickly and you do all these trills, so they can ornament almost every single note. And they can bend notes by moving the flute around. They can kind of bend notes and slide into notes. So if you put all those instruments together in a room and play one melody, you're hearing this texture and fabric that's just magical. And that's, I think, what hit me that day in front of the mission at the medieval festival when I heard this music for the first time, because I was hearing melody, which I was already tuned into, but I was hearing it on such a complex level. Trivia for you: the word lute, Lute, it came from the Arabic word for oud, which is al-oud, al-oud. And so Arabic, like Spanish, you'd rarely say just a noun without the definite article el in front of it. So when someone said, "Hey, what's that instrument called?" they wouldn't say oud. They'd say el oud, the oud. So alud sounds like a lute. And that's kind of like, that's the story. It's like, oh, I hear lute, and so they called these instruments lutes, and that's kind of how Europe grabbed that name. And it's basically the same instrument. So this instrument traveled, all over the Middle East, and then came up through North Africa into southern Spain during that period of just glorious golden years where the Christians, Muslims, and Jews were all playing music together and living and eating together. So I think that was one of the routes that it got into Europe. It is fretless, so you kind of have to find your own notes on it, which means you can play any note you want on it. So that's C, and then here's G, and then here's D. D's metal wound. The first two strings are just nylon. And then here's A, and then F, and then C again. Picking technique, as you may have noticed too, is like a lot of tremolo. So tremolo is rapid picking. The voice is considered like the most supreme instrument, and so all instruments are trying to emulate the voice. And if you want this instrument to actually sustain a note for a long period of time, you have to keep plucking. You have to keep picking that note. This is the kanun.
Wow.
It resonates, and makes the bridge vibrate, and then that vibration goes through the bridge into the skin, and then it goes inside the instrument and then back out the holes. So what you have is kind of like the first built-in reverb on an instrument. You can almost hear it like we're in a little bit of a tunnel. Definitely has a, like a cathedral sound in a way if you're really close to it. But each note is 3 strings tuned to the same pitch. They're all in unison. And then what you see here is this very complicated torture device. In Arabic, they're called orab, or plural, orabat. And in Turkish, they're called mandal, or mandalar, plural. It's kind of cool. You can see the maqam system visually, the step, all the intervals. It's played with picks. I use cow horn or water buffalo horn. The Turks like to play with tortoise shell, which is illegal. Tremolo is a big deal in this. Again, I think because it's hard to have a sustained note, at least traditionally. It's common to play in octaves on this instrument because you have 3.5 octaves. you.
Could I play this in the Middle East ensemble? The
Actually, you
trumpet?
can.
Really?
Actually, you can. In a popular Egyptian music called Shabi, the very first popular band of the singer Ahmed Abdouaya, he had the first trumpet player to be able to play quarter tones. Quarter
That's
tone.
great because I'm mostly playing quarter tones. I don't know.
Perfect.
Um,
Yeah, if you rip the frets off, it'll be fine.
there's violin.
Of course, yeah. The violin is a very important instrument. There's violin sections now.
How about this one? Can we
It's
play this one?
possible. We call it the org for the keyboard.
Would this be? But that's an Indian instrument.
That's India. Yeah, India is not in the Middle East. India is its own subcontinent.
Someone told me to sit down at the piano and play a theme that sounds like an Arab theme. I'm gonna play something that's like a modified minor scale with a flattened two, and the third is raised, but it's still a minor scale. But that is more of a musical stereotype than. Can you please explain what the real deal is? Not just the 25 cent. I'm imitating it on the piano.
It is stereotypical because that's what Westerners hear when Middle Eastern music or Middle Eastern fantasy culture and movies or whatever is being is trying to be conveyed. So anytime you see like an Arab terrorist in some movie, you'll hear this scale. And that's Hijaz. At least that's the Hijaz tetrachord, the first four notes of it. Mode is very special. And the modal system in the Arab world is called maqam. It speaks to culture and whose culture it is. It also dictates kind of the phrasing. It also dictates directionality. If it could be a descending mode or an ascending mode. I have an example of a maqam that I want to share with you. It's considered like their fundamental maqam. Just as if you're a music student here, you'd learn C major. Their fundamental maqam is called Rust on C. So maqam Rust is this fundamental scale. It's just like C major, except for E natural and B natural, you have E half flat. Here's my C, and I have an open D string, and then my E half flat. Here's E natural. Here's E flat. And E half flat. And F, G, A, B half flat, C. If you were in Egypt or something and say, hey, what's maqam Rus? Can you play it for me? You get something like this. Maqam Rus, And then the three E's together, starting with flat, half flat, natural. Here's the C for reference. And here's the half flat and natural. And these maqams, they're based on what's called tetrachordal theory, which they adopted from the Greek system. And so they conceive of these modes in stacked tetrachords. So you have a Rus tetrachord, which would just be the C, D, E half flat, F. And then the next tetrachord would take off from that G, and it would be a Rus tetrachord, meaning the third is a half flat, just like here. And then another top To Russ would be a minor tetrachord. So you have the Russ tetrachord, minor, and even Hijaz on top. One more time.
Thank you, Jim and Lynn, for inviting me to be part of your program. I'm going to be demonstrating some Arabic drumming. Jim asked me to demonstrate a certain beat. In Arabic, we have a wide range of beats, but this one in particular, it's very popular. It's a root beat for three more variations of it. The name of the beat is maqsoom. Maqsoom. And basically, before we start playing the beat, I wanted to introduce the idea of in Arabic music, the rhythms, they have skeletons that you have to memorize and internalize, and then you will learn also how to embellish them and how to fill them and round them up. And that's how you start when you're actually playing them. Okay, but in the beginning, you understand the beat as its basic pulse. So this is the maqsoom beat, and it's in a 4/4 count, and it would be at this, let's say, at this speed, dum tak tak dum tak 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 as a basic skeleton. And then when you put just the first standard fill, it becomes dum tak ka tak dum ka tak taka dum tak ka tak dum ka tak taka dum tak ka tak dum ka tak taka dum tak ka tak dum ka tak. And then the second also standard fill will be dum tak ta ta tak dum ta ta tak ta ta dum tak ta ta tak dum ta ta tak ta ta dum tak ta ta tak dum ta ta tak ta ta dum tak ta ta tak dum ta ta tak. Okay, so now that's the beat recited and just learned as mentally. When you come to playing it on the drums, each drum has a set of sounds that deals with it. So you will be able to do the same beat with different sounds. So, for example, this is the Rebecca. It has basic 5 sounds. They start with the bass sound, the dum, and then ka, tek, suck. That's the popping sound, like a slab, we call it sometimes. And you have this whole system of muting the skin. Okay, so with those sounds, you can vary the beat itself. In this demonstration, I'm going to just play them basic with the tek and the suck and the taqqa, just to show you the basic of it. And I will do the 3 different phases. Very simple: first fill and second fill.
Doom tech, tech doom, tech, doom tech, tech doom, tech, doom tech, tech doom, tech, doom tech, tech doom, tech. Either you're really bad at rhythm or that Zoom out of sync is happening. There are certain rhythms associated with specific cultures that are just purely Egyptian or very specifically Turkish or specifically Armenian. This first rhythm here on this slide is called Saidi. Saidi. And the Said is the region of southern Egypt, also called Upper Egypt, because southern Egypt is actually higher elevation, and the Nile flows down from Sudan north into Alexandria and out of the Mediterranean. And Saidi is very particular. It has a doom in the middle. See, it's very similar to Maksum, but there's a doom in the middle as well as the first beat. And when it's played fast, that's actually the main beat for the pop music in Egypt. Doom tech, doom doom tech, doom tech, doom doom tech, doom tech, doom doom. Another rhythm that's shared throughout Turkey and the Middle East is this very classical rhythm called samai. And samai comes from the Arabic root to listen. So it's like listening music, music for listening. It's a very stately rhythm and it has a lot of rests, as you can see, rests on 2, 3, 5, 9, and 10. Doom, rest, rest, tack, rest, doom, doom, tack, rest, rest, doom, rest, 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 rest. We get our fun odd metered rhythms. We have 7s, we have 9s, we have 13s, we have 21s, we have 11s. They're all over the place, and a lot of those odd metered rhythms come from Turkey and a lot from the Balkans as well. Laz is also another name for a dance, a type of dance. This particular Laz is divided, it divides the 7 by 2, 2, and 3. As you can see in the bottom there, I have the 2s in green and the 3, 1, 2, 3 in red. So essentially, it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The doom ka tek ka doom ka ka doom ka tek ka doom ka ka doom ka tek ka doom ka ka doom ka tek ka doom ka ka. They're really fun, really fun. My goodness, dance is enormous over there, and it's the men dance, the children dance, the women dance. I think more men dance than women, actually, just because they have more freedom to in public. You know, like at a wedding or on the street, and there's someone just blaring music out of speakers. All the young men and grown men, whatever, will just start dancing, waving their arms around, jumping on boxes, and just making a party. It's a culture of celebration. They love their music and they love celebrating it. What it is usually you play a song to bring them out, and they're doing their thing, and you're playing the song, and then you kind of look at each other and nod each other, and you go into solos for a while. So all these things have to be done either by eyes, or sometimes we make set lists when we have time ahead of time. Like, oh, it's Rebecca, and she wants an intro and Maksoum. She wants this Nai Takasim. She wants a drum solo and then some outro. That's really great for a musician, especially a student who's just trying to, like, it's just like you're workshopping, basically. You're really workshopping in there, and you're like there's people watching you, there's master musicians watching you, everybody's kind of like tense, but still it's still just so joyous. It's a party. It's really a joyous party. It's really a wonderful scene.
So today, Jim helped us kind of get introduced to some of the very basic tenets of Arab music, Middle Eastern music, and how it is put together, and some of the differences that you hopefully, even if you aren't a musician, and I know a lot of this, there's a lot of technical language, but for you to start understanding what the differences are, that was today. Today, we can't wait for the next installment. Thank you so much.
It's really been a pleasure, Lynn. I love what you're doing here. I love your scene. It's magic.
There's so many amazing stories in the world, and we love sharing them with you. Donations from viewers make it possible. If you like this show and want to see more, please click the donate button below or visit our website, canvaspresents.org. Thank you.